The morning Vivienne Ashford decided that a man in muddy work boots had no place in her hotel's executive lounge, she was running on 4 hours of sleep and the particular kind of arrogance that comes from never once being wrong. At least, that was how she had always seen herself: decisive, efficient, someone who could read a room and a person in under 10 seconds. She was wrong about Elliot Marsh in about 7. The Grand Callaway had been Vivienne's whole life for 11 years. She had joined the hotel group as a regional director at 31, worked herself up to CEO of Callaway Hospitality Group by 38, and now at 42, she ran a portfolio of 14 luxury properties across the eastern seaboard. The flagship was the Grand Callaway in Chicago, 42 floors of marble and mahogany on Michigan Avenue, the kind of place where senators held fundraisers and tech billionaires booked the penthouse for quarterly visits, like it was a storage unit they happened to sleep in. Vivienne had not become CEO by being soft. She had become CEO by making decisions faster than anyone else in the room, and then standing behind those decisions so completely that no one ever thought to question them. That was the thing about confidence. It was contagious. Her board believed in her because she never appeared to doubt herself. The morning of October 3rd was supposed to be a formality. A final walkthrough before the Hartfield Group, one of the largest private equity firms in the Midwest, signed a $340 million partnership deal to co-develop 3 new Callaway properties. The deal had been 8 months in negotiation. Her CFO, Patrick, had called it the most significant transaction in the company's history. Her lawyers had been billing at emergency rates for 2 weeks. All that remained was the signature. Vivienne arrived at the hotel at 6:45, which was early even by her standards. She took the private elevator to the 42nd floor, did a walk of the executive suite where the signing would happen at noon, adjusted the placement of 2 chairs that were slightly off-center, and then went down to the executive lounge on the 38th floor for coffee. That was where she saw him. He was sitting in the corner by the window, the seat Vivienne privately considered the best in the building, with a view straight up the lakefront. And he was reading something on a battered tablet, one ankle crossed over his knee. He wore a canvas jacket that had seen better years, dark work pants, and boots that still had traces of dried mud on the soles. A paper cup from the coffee cart downstairs sat on the table beside him, not one of the lounge's signature ceramic cups with the gold rim. The executive lounge had a keycard system. Guests had to be on the approved list. Vivienne made a mental note to speak with Marcus at the front desk about how this person had gotten through. But first, excuse me. She walked over, and she used the voice she used in board meetings. Pleasant, precise, leaving no room for misinterpretation. This lounge is reserved for Callaway executive-tier guests. Can I help you find somewhere more comfortable downstairs? He looked up from his tablet. He had steady gray eyes and a calm that she found in that moment mildly irritating. I'm fine here, thank you, he said. I don't think you understand. She smiled. This floor has a restricted access policy. If your keycard was issued in error, it wasn't issued in error. She glanced at the paper cup. Executive lounge guests are welcome to our full beverage service, complimentary. A gentle reminder that he didn't appear to belong. He looked at the paper cup, then back at her. I brought it from downstairs. I prefer their dark roast. There was something in the way he said it. Not defensive, not apologetic, simply a statement of fact that she found for a reason she couldn't entirely name, vaguely destabilizing. She pushed past it. I'm Vivienne Ashford, CEO of Callaway Hospitality. What's your name? Elliot, he said. She waited. Elliot Marsh, he added, without any particular urgency. The name didn't register. She had a memory for names. It was one of her professional assets, but this one landed nowhere. Not a senator, not a tech CEO, not anyone she had briefed before the Hartfield signing. Mr. Marsh, I'm going to ask our concierge team to assist you today. I have a private event on this floor beginning at 10, and we need to prepare the space. It wasn't entirely true. The event was on 42, not 38. But it was close enough to true that she didn't examine it. He closed his tablet. He didn't argue. He simply stood, nodded once in a way that was neither rude nor warm, tucked the tablet under his arm, and walked toward the elevator. She watched him go and thought nothing more about it. Patrick Nguyen found her at 8:15, and he was moving the way he only moved when something had gone wrong with a number. Do you have a second? The Hartfield prep is at 9. I know. This is about Hartfield. He pulled the door of her office closed behind him, which was another sign. Patrick left doors open when everything was fine. I just got a call from their office. Elliot Marsh is not attending the signing today. Vivienne looked up from her laptop. Who? Elliot Marsh. He's one of the Hartfield principals. He's actually. Patrick ran a hand over the back of his neck, which was what he did when he had to deliver information he'd rather not. He's the one who personally championed the Callaway partnership internally. He's been the deciding vote on the investment committee for the last 2 rounds. The name landed differently now. He was here, she said slowly. I know, this morning, in the lounge. Patrick's expression confirmed what she hadn't yet finished saying. He called the Hartfield office from the lobby, Patrick said. 40 minutes ago, he's withdrawing from the deal. The room went quiet in a way that had nothing to do with sound. Vivienne set down her pen. On what grounds? He didn't specify grounds. He said he'd encountered a situation that caused him to reconsider the partnership. Patrick paused. Their office said he was very calm about it. That's all they told me. She thought about the gray eyes, the way he had said, I prefer their dark roast, like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. Get me his number, she said. The call lasted 4 minutes. She had prepared, in the minutes before it, a version of herself that was measured and professional and showed nothing. She had handled crises before. She had talked a major investor back from the ledge after a bad quarter by the sheer force of her composure. She was good at this. Mr. Marsh, she began. I understand there may have been some miscommunication this morning. There wasn't a miscommunication. His voice was the same as it had been in the lounge, unhurried, even. You were very clear. If I gave you the impression that you weren't welcome, you did give me that impression. A pause. You were polite about it. I'll give you that. I didn't know who you were. I know. She waited for him to say something that would give her a foothold, some frustration she could address, some misunderstanding she could correct. He didn't. That's actually the point, he said finally. If I'd walked in wearing a suit, you wouldn't have approached me at all. She didn't answer, because there was no honest answer that helped her. Miss Ashford, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've sat across from a lot of people in a lot of boardrooms. You want to know what I've learned? He didn't wait for her to answer. The way people treat you when they think you don't matter is the most accurate data point you'll ever get about them. He wasn't angry. That was the thing that stayed with her afterward, long after the call ended, and Patrick came back in to find her sitting at her desk with the phone still in her hand. He wasn't angry. He was just done. I'll be withdrawing formally by end of day, he said. I wish you and your team well. The line went quiet. She sat in her office for 18 minutes and did not call anyone. This was unusual. In a crisis, Vivienne's instinct was always to move, call legal, call communications, get ahead of whatever was coming. Motion was her default. But there was nothing legal could do about this. There was no press release that addressed it. The deal was dead because she had looked at a man in muddy boots and decided he didn't belong in a room that he had more right to be in than she knew. Patrick knocked at 11 and offered to brief the board. She told him she would do it herself. The board took it better than she expected, which somehow made it worse. Gerald Whitmore, the chairman, said these things happened and that Hartfield wasn't the only firm of their scale. Susan Cleary, who had been on the board since before Vivienne's tenure, said she had never trusted private equity on timelines this tight anyway. There was a general atmosphere of rallying that Vivienne recognized as the board performing its function, absorbing a blow on behalf of the company and redistributing the weight. None of them asked her what had happened exactly. She had kept the account brief and factual. A miscommunication with a key Hartfield partner had caused the firm to withdraw. She did not say, I asked him to leave the lounge because he was wearing muddy boots and carrying a paper coffee cup. She thought about saying it. She sat in that boardroom for 90 minutes and turned the sentence over in her head several times. She didn't say it. She found his email address through a mutual contact, one of the architects the Hartfield Group used on development projects, a woman named Beverly Cho, who had worked with both sides on the early design phase of the Callaway partnership. Beverly forwarded the introduction without asking too many questions, which Vivienne appreciated. She wrote 6 drafts of the email before she sent one. The first 3 were too formal, which she recognized as a kind of armor. The 4th was too apologetic, which felt like a different kind of performance. The 5th was a single paragraph that said the things she actually needed to say, in the order she needed to say them, without dressing them up. The 6th was almost identical to the 5th, but she took out the word sincerely and replaced it with nothing, because sincerely felt like a lie. She sent it at 9:47 on a Thursday night from her desk at the hotel, with the city lights spread out below her, and she did not expect a response. He responded on a Monday, Ms. Ashford, I appreciate you writing. I'll be honest with you, I don't usually respond to these because in my experience an apology after a consequence is a different thing than accountability. But your email read like you were actually thinking about it rather than managing it. I'm willing to talk. She read it 3 times. They met at a coffee shop in the West Loop. His choice, which she had expected, and somewhere with no white tablecloths or golf rim cups, which she had also expected. He was already there when she arrived at a corner table with a dark roast in a paper cup. She almost said something about it and didn't. He was wearing a jacket that looked marginally less weathered than the one from the hotel, and he had a notebook in front of him, actual paper, with some handwritten notes on it that she couldn't read from her angle. "I looked you up after that morning," she said, when they had established the basic protocols of the conversation. "I know, I could tell. You built Marsh Industrial out of a machine shop your father left you. Revenue last year was $400 million. She paused. "None of that was on the briefing materials my team prepared." "No," he said. "It usually isn't, because you don't attend events in your capacity because I prefer to know whether the people I work with treat everyone the same or just the people they think they need to." He said it simply, like it was a policy he'd developed the way other people developed a preference for window seats. "It saved me from 2 very expensive mistakes in the last decade." She thought about the mud on his boots. She wondered if it had been deliberate, then decided it probably hadn't, that it was more that he simply didn't bother cleaning them before a meeting because it had never occurred to him that anyone worth working with would care. "I owe you an apology," she said. "Not the one in the email. That one was also real." But she stopped, chose the honest thing. "I asked you to leave because you looked like someone who had come in through the wrong door, and I was wrong." He looked at her for a moment. "Yes," he said, "you were. Not it's okay. Not I understand." Just a plain acknowledgement, and something about the plainness of it landed harder than any anger would have. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Sure. The mud on the boots. Was that? I drove up from a job site in Joliet." He picked up his coffee. "We're pouring foundation for a distribution center. I was there at 5 in the morning. At 5, I wanted to see the first pour." He said it without self-congratulation, like this was simply the kind of thing a person did. "I've missed a few over the years because I got too focused on the board meetings and the signatures. I decided a while back I wasn't going to miss them anymore." She thought about her morning, the private elevator, the chair placement, the 42 floors of marble. She thought about the last time she had been on an actual job site. She couldn't remember. He didn't re-enter the deal. She hadn't expected him to. That wasn't why she had reached out, or at least she had tried to make sure it wasn't. What he did do was recommend her to another firm, a smaller one, a family office out of Indianapolis called Strand Capital, that had been looking for a hospitality partner for a boutique development in Nashville. The introduction email arrived 3 weeks after the West Loop coffee meeting, and he didn't mention that he was making it until after it had been sent, which was characteristic of what she was beginning to understand was his method. "Why?" she asked when she called to thank him. "Because you drove to Joliet," he said. She had in fact done that. 2 Saturdays after their meeting, she had gotten in her car at 4 in the morning and driven south to see the foundation pour. She hadn't told anyone she was coming. She had stood at the perimeter in wellies she had bought the night before, watching the concrete move, and one of the workers, a young guy, maybe 22, with a fluorescent vest that was 2 sizes too big, had handed her a hard hat and said, "You're going to need this." She had stood out there for 2 hours. She had not adjusted anyone's chair afterward. Strand Capital closed in 4 months. The Nashville property broke ground the following spring. It was smaller than the Hartfield deal, the project valued at roughly 1/10 the scale, but it was solid, and it was hers in a way that the Hartfield deal, 8 months of legal machinery and executive rehearsal, had never quite felt. The day the contracts were signed, she was in a conference room in Indianapolis with 4 people she had now come to know by name, not as counterparties or stakeholders, but as people. James Strand, the patriarch who was 71, and showed her photos of his grandchildren before every meeting. His daughter Clara, who ran operations and kept a running list of objections she wanted addressed before she signed anything. A young analyst named Brooks, who took notes and never spoke up in meetings, but had twice sent emails afterward that identified problems no one else had caught. She had learned their names. She had asked about the grandchildren. She had read Brooks's emails carefully and responded to them directly, not through Patrick, because she had decided that when someone showed you where the cracks were, you owed them the courtesy of your own attention. When James signed, he looked up and said, "You're different than I expected." Different how? He thought about it. "Less polished," he said, in a tone that made it clearly a compliment. She took it as one. She saw Elliot Marsh one more time that year, at an industry dinner she hadn't planned to attend until her assistant reminded her twice. He was at a table across the room talking to someone she didn't recognize, and he caught her eye once and lifted his coffee cup. Still paper, she noticed incongruous against the hotel's crystal glassware. In a brief acknowledgement, she smiled back. She didn't go over to network. She didn't calculate what further connection might be worth. She just registered him as a person in a room she was also in, and felt something that took her a moment to identify because it was unfamiliar. It was uncomplicated gratitude. Not for the Strand introduction exactly. For the fact that he had been honest with her in a way that no one inside her company could afford to be. Her board supported her. Her CFO deferred to her. Her team was loyal and capable and operated within the gravitational field of her authority, which meant that no one on her staff would ever tell her she had asked a man to leave a room because of his boots. Elliot Marsh had no reason to protect her feelings, so he hadn't. On the morning of the Nashville groundbreaking, Vivienne drove herself. No car service. She had the address typed into her phone, and she took the interstate with the windows down in the March air, colder than it should have been, the Tennessee hills still brown from winter. She got there early, which she still did, but now it was because she wanted to stand at the edge of the cleared land before anyone else arrived and just look at it. The raw ground, the survey markers, the potential of something that wasn't anything yet. A man in a hard hat came over, site foreman. He glanced at her in the way people glanced at women who arrived alone to job sites, the brief calculation of whether she was lost. "Can I help you?" he asked. "I'm Vivienne Ashford," she said. "I'm the CEO of the group developing this property." He blinked once, then extended his hand. "Tom Riley. We spoke on the phone last month." "We did." She shook it. "You asked whether we'd be using local contractors for the finish work. I didn't expect you to remember that." "It was a good question," she said. "The answer is yes, mostly Williamson County." She looked out at the site. "How does it look to you?" He looked at it too, the same way she had been looking at it before he walked over. Not like a spec sheet, but like a place. "Solid ground," he said. "Good drainage. This one's going to go clean." She nodded. "Glad to hear it," she said. And she meant it, in the way you mean things when you've stopped performing and started paying attention. When the world in front of you is enough, because you've finally learned to see what's in it.